We're honored to host our nice friend who is the author of this article, which is going to be discussed tonight in Tehran time and today in United States time. Dr. Ali Nosrat, who is our honor, and he works and teaches endodontics in University of Maryland in the United States, and we're going to host him tonight, and we're going to appraise his most updated paper on the effect of pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic on crack formation in teeth attending endodontic clinic in the United States. So tonight we have Dr. Said Ali Abai, our postgraduate student, our chief resident in Department of Endodontics, School of Dentistry in Tehran University of Medical Sciences, who is going to appraise this article. In between, we're going to have discussions over some issues or some difficulties, or let's say questions to ask authors of the manuscript. So the stage is yours, Said Ali. Please get started. I don't know whether we have Dr. Nosrat still with us or no. I think that he's not still with us. I think let me just see. Dr. Nosrat hasn't joined us yet. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Sadri, please go for the clips one more time if we have, because I think that we're going to have a lot of time before getting started officially, because I think that we have, I think, yeah, 7 minutes. So by this time we're, it's not, I think it's not bad to have the clips one more time, huh? All right. Hello. I would like to welcome all the participants in tonight's session, or let's say this time session, because it's nighttime in Iran and it's daytime in the United States and probably daytime in some other parts of the world. I see the picture of my bosom friend, Dr. Ali Nosrat from the United States, the author of this manuscript is going to be discussed tonight. And I would like to say hi from a distant and remote part of the world to Ali. Hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, tonight we are going to discuss over one of your recent articles published in the Journal of Endodontics in 2022 about the relationship between the cracked teeth and the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there anything to start with, Ali? So before we get started?
Well, I'm not familiar with the format of these journal clubs, so whatever you guys are comfortable doing, do it. I'll be listening, and I'll comment at the end if you'd like me to. However you've been doing it in the past, let's go ahead and do it.
All right.
Neutral.
Don't you want to say hello to the audience or something?
I don't see the audience. I have only the Tehran University of Medical Science here.
Okay. So anyhow, let's get started from our appraiser, Dr. Said Ali Abai, our chief resident in Department of Endodontics, School of Dentistry in Tehran University of Medical Sciences. So Dr. Abai, please introduce yourself and get started from your presentation.
Hello, good evening. Hello to everyone, hello to Dr. Nosrat and Dr. Asadian. It makes a warm welcome to you. I'm so glad this journal club.
Dr. Abai, please speak a little bit louder and be a little bit closer to the microphone because your voice is not that much clear.
I'm Dr. Said Ali Abai, dentist and chief president of Tehran University Endodontic Department. And I'm so glad I'm here to appraise and explain your article.
All right, please get started because we're in lack of time. Just do it a little bit faster. Okay, start, please say that.
The title of this article is, was the COVID-19 pandemic associated with an increased rate of cracked teeth? And this article is published in October 2022 in JUE. Let me start with introduction of this article. In the introduction, it says the coronavirus disease COVID-19 can be impacted several aspects of public health, such as oral health, and if this pandemic associated with less dental visit, decline oral health, and increased experience of toothache. This toothache have been related to disrupted socioeconomic stature and lack of access to dental practice and fear of cross-contamination in dental office. And it's equal to reduce toothache equal to reduce quality of life. In totally, in 2020, the COVID-19 in 2020 and 2021 both associated with increased the number of non-surgical root canal treatment and these symptoms and treatment procedure in this period of time and previous studies, including changing in patient psychological factors, and changing in procedures and symptoms. And the patient reluctant to visit the dentist or endodontist until pain arises, and a generally negative attitude toward the dental visit or unidentified change in etiology of endodontic pathology. But we haven't, there is a lack of data on how COVID-19 pandemic has changed this incidence of different diseases. In addition, a national poll by Health Policy Institute by ADA in 2021 asking the practicing dentists about observation of incidence of practice, and majority of them responded they had the increase in the incidence of practice in their practices. Totally, practice caused by Braxis, clenching, dermal cycling of food or habitual chewing on hard food or anger. And these patients may have been increased during the pandemic as a result of increased anxiety or depressive symptoms. And cracks are more common in males, progress slowly, and resulting 3% of cases uh, um, and other signs of perforation is about 14% with 1 year, and 10% of all cases refer to endodontist for treatment, and 20 to 29 cracks are of cracks that have reversible pulpitis and eventually require RCT between 6 months to 2 years. In addition, the aim of this observational study were to determine the rate of cracks and all other etiology factors for endodontic pathologies in a period of time, pre-COVID-19 era in 2020, in 2019, initial outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020, and ongoing pandemic of COVID-19 in 2021.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abi. I would like to ask a couple of questions, Dr. Nosrat, about your article. First of all, how much do you think is it possible, or let's say, is it popular among authors of scientific articles to assign a question as a title of their article? Is it a frequent or let's say, is it a usual approach of selecting a title, or no, it's just something that is just based on your literal tact?
It's a tactic to I mean, first of all, it's a very good question, because no, it's not common, first and foremost. And it's a tactic that you want to capture readers' attention. So you have the title of your article, and you want the reader to wonder that if actually this happened or not. So this question has been in mind of every practitioner in the United States, because they've been seeing that there was an increase in the rate of cracked teeth in their practices, but there was no solid evidence, no scientific evidence to support it. So everybody would see this, and it was an observation for almost every single clinician working in the United States, but there was no solid evidence to support it. And by that, I mean a scientific article. So of course, there was that HPI poll that Dr. Abai mentioned, that was done by the ADA back in 2020 and 21, and they showed that, I mean, they asked dentists a simple question: that do you see a more number of cracked teeth in your practice right now versus as compared to before pandemic of COVID-19? And the answer was a solid yes for most practitioners. And the question had some other details, like, do you see more fractured cusps? Do you see more TMJ issues, and some relevant subjects? So the result of that basically that poll came out very striking, but still a poll is not a scientific evidence. Is basically a collection of opinions or observations by clinicians. So in order to actually make it more interesting, we actually try to make it a question rather than a news. News means that you could just put a title, say, hey, COVID-19 pandemic was associated with increased rate of cracked teeth. But when you make it a question, then the readers will be more interested to actually look into the details of the study, read through the abstract and not full text of the article to understand whether or not it was associated. So the title doesn't give you an answer. The abstract does. The paper does, and it's something that sometimes authors do, very not frequently, to basically to sort of market a paper of, if I will.
So it's kind of journalistic approach of to introduce your paper in a way, in a more pleasant way for the readers, right?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Another question of mine is about the term rate here, which
Yes.
it's already highlighted by this slide. This term is a general actual term, but it is not. It does not address a specific meaning, or let's say a specific concept in terms of scientific approaches. Is it about the incidence rate, or is it about the prevalence rate? What is it?
Very interesting, very good question. So let me tell the story behind this. So the title that we initially submitted to the Journal of Endodontics, it was not rate, it was incidence. And we had this basically comment by reviewers. There were 3 reviewers. One of them was a biostatistician. 2 of them were basically other reviewers, like perhaps endodontists. Yeah. And the comment by the biostatistician, one of the reviewers, was that you cannot call this incident because there are so many other variables that are not accounted for. For instance, if a patient who has a persistent infection, a periapical lesion in a previous extruded tooth, and is asymptomatic, is being advised to go and see an endodontist, is not coming to your office because they don't have symptoms and they don't want to get COVID-19 by just getting out of home and come to your office. So that actually, that absence of symptomatic patients can cause fluctuation in the number of other etiologies in your research.
Oh, nice.
So you cannot call this an incident because it doesn't mean that COVID-19 pandemic actually caused this directly. Yeah. So there's a difference between incidence and prevalence. Incidence is the number of new cases happening prospectively, and prevalence is the number of cases that are there retrospectively. And you cannot call it prevalence because, again, some authors would argue similarly that, hey, these cracked teeth were there, but the numbers are showing up to be higher because other patients aren't there. So our biostatistician, the other 2 authors in our paper, Professor Wu D and Peter Yu, these are people from North Carolina. I mean, University of North Carolina, you can see that we're basically helping us with the statistics. They said that the best term to use here is the rate, because it does not specifically tell you if it is incidence or prevalence.
And it can cover both.
Shows you is that it's just the number increased proportionally.
Yeah. Okay. So, and also it does not directly address to the incidence or prevalence, but it also includes both incidence and prevalence. Meanwhile,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead, Dr. Albay. Please go ahead.
In the following, in the material and method, the present stable data collected through 2 previous studies, and this study protocol was reviewed by IRB, and the guidelines for strengthening the reporting of observational studies in epidemiology were followed. The data was collected from two private endodontic in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C., and two offices shared the same group of endodontists, and they collected this data from 3 period of time.
Excuse me, let me just pause a little bit here. Why did you choose these 3 periods of time, this pre-COVID and this intra-COVID time intervals, let's say, pre-COVID, initial COVID outbreak, and ongoing? How did you differentiate these 3 eras, these 3 actually periods of time?
So the background of this is the other 2 papers that I asked Dr. Nakufar to share with the group before we have this conversation. So the period of time that we use is a cross-section of time that we thought is an important, is a valuable cross-section to look at as a base to compare the other 2 periods with. And that is March 15th till end of May. This is basically the period of time in 2020 where a lockdown happened in the United States. So that's the period of time where suddenly public lost their access to dental care. So, yes, and basically this actually created a lot of basically changes in patient characteristics and basically in the pain levels, number of instant drainages, and many things that are shown in the other 2 papers that I shared. Once we chose this period of time as basically as a time that actually showed how the outbreak of the COVID caused changes in the feature or characteristics of endodontic patients, then we decided to use the same period of time 1 year before that in 2019 as a comparator, as basically a period of time that everything was normal and there was basically no lack of access to dental care. And then 1 year after this incident, in 2021, the same period of time, March 15 to end of May, which was chosen as a period of time where public had access to the dental care, but there was an ongoing pandemic of COVID-19. So this period will actually show us how the pandemic itself would have instantly caused changes in characteristics of patients. So all these 2 periods, like March 15 to end of May in 2020 and March 15 to end of May in 2021 were compared to the same period of time in 2019. That was the normal period. So this was basic structure was put in place in the previous 2 papers where we looked at the changes in 2020 and changes in 2021. And then now in the 3rd paper, we're looking at the etiologies of endodontic basically disease in these 2 periods compared to 2020 and 2019, which was the normal time.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Abi, please go ahead.
When the patient arrived at the office, the endodontist collected the data regarding the patient, chief complaint, and dental history. A series of clinical examination was performed like percussion, palpation, and bite test, thermal and electric part test, and periodontal probing and assessment of mobility. And at the end, the periapical radiograph of tooth was taken. And an electronic chart was created for each patient, and this note documented the prognosis and expected outcome based on the etiology, clinical, and radiograph findings. So if the patient only received the evaluation without treatment, the endodontist documented the clinical and radiograph finding. Unlike the previous 2 studies, the tools associated with patient chief complaint was the unit of analysis, not the patient visit. In data collection and statistical analysis, they used 2 Surgical analysis followed chi-square test and multiple testing adjustment uh, for patient and period of times. Uh, and a scattered plot of patients based on the age and rate of practice was prepared to visually determine if cracks happen with high frequency in a specific age range. And a logistic regression model was used to examine the association between the rate of practice, age range, and sex simultaneously in each year. This is a list of etiology factors and their definition in this article, and it's the chi-square analysis.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abai. Please pause for a moment. I would like to ask Dr. Nosrat a question about the teeth which were involved in your study. Why? First of all, let me ask you another question. Is this a cross-sectional study or a case control or a cohort in terms of you know, biostatistical, or let's say methodological point of view?
And to be general, it's an observational study, of course. And if you want to know, if you want to get into the details of the subcategory, it's a cross-sectional study. Basically, three cross sections, 3 different periods of times are chosen, where we actually looked at the fluctuation or changes in the rate of different etiologies of endodontic disease. So I would call this a cross-sectional.
So why don't you call it a cohort?
Cohort. So if we want to call this a cohort, it has to have basically a continuum, meaning that, for instance, we chose 3 cross sections of time in 2019, 2020, and 2021. If the study design was as hypothetically as is, like we started looking into etiology of all patients, all teeth, beginning of 2019 all the way to the end of 2021, every single month and every single day was included, then you could have called this a cohort study because there's a continuum in it. But in the fact that we chose these cross sections of time make this less than a cohort and more of a cross-sectional study. Plus, there is no follow-up into this. For instance, if you again, if you had this protocol established in 2020, and then you say we'll have a retrospective basically component starting 2019 till the date we started this study, and then a prospective component from the date of the study going all the way to a date that we determined, let's say end of 2021, December 31st, 2021, then you could have called this a cohort, because then basically you have a period of continuous observation. By design, this is mainly a cross-sectional study, not a cohort.
Okay, and why didn't you differentiate the teeth into your study? You know, of course, it would have been nice to compare, because you're comparing pre-COVID to intra-COVID, let's say, or yeah, it's much better to say intra-COVID era. For instance, when you're comparing these 2 periods of time, you can make a comparison between the teeth which are involved in crack formation. For example, is this COVID-19 pandemic effective in producing cracks in molars, for example, maxillar molars in comparison with premolars, or mandibular molars in comparison with maxillary molars? Why didn't you do that?
So there are many things that were basically, you might think that is lacking in this study. That I do understand that, but if we combine this with the previous 2 studies, you sort of get the answer to that question, because there is just so much that we can put in one paper. The the answer to your question is actually is in the previous two studies where we actually looked at the proportional distribution of teeth in the patients who actually were referred or found us and came to our practices. We did not have the capacity to actually include more data in this paper, and we did not have the capacity to include this paper or data of this paper in our previous papers, because it wouldn't just I mean, it will make the paper too long. So that's why this is a continuum, like a part 1, part 2, and part 3. And of course, having this kind of approach causes other problems that you're now facing, you're now basically pointing out, and that's the data doesn't exist in front of me. I want to look at the rate of cracked teeth based on the tooth type, but it doesn't exist here. And I hear you. But the point is that there's just so much data that can put into one paper. You have a limit of let's say 3,500 words that you can put in a paper. And once you have such detail and such large section dedicated to statistical analysis and data presentation, you can have a very short discussion and a very short introduction. You have to wrap up your paper. So we had this idea from the beginning, but we couldn't do it. This is definitely not ideal. The ideal way of presenting this data is to combine at least this third paper, the cracked teeth, with the second paper where we look at the characteristics of patient in the entire COVID-19 pandemic, and present them all together, include the analysis in that multiple variable analysis that we did in the previous paper. But then good luck reading that paper. I mean, it will take you just 3-4 hours to start from basic introduction all the way to the end of discussion. And of course, the journal would have rejected our paper because of the length and the size of it. So that was the limitation that we have. I do understand your point, and I basically my comment is that if you combine it with the other paper, you get a gist of the answer to your question, not a clear answer.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Abay, please go ahead.
Some results: the etiology of endodontic complaint disease was assessed in 2,400 OPTs in 3 years, and it was rare patient in more than 1 group. The point that I must mention for you is the etiologic factors of abrasion, accretion, congenital anomaly, dentinal hypersensitivity, and non-endodontic bone erosion were not analyzed because of the low number of occurrences. After adjusting for multiple testing, 2 variables of cracks and persistent infection showed a significant association with the 2 years overall. ECR, or external cervical resorption, initially showed a significant change in analysis, but after adjusting for multiple testing, the changes were not significant.
Can you please, Dr. Nosrat, can you please explain a little bit more about
this
paragraph?
I know that this is going to be a question. So here's the concept. So you have a pool of categorical data, which are in 3 columns: 2019, 2020, 2021, and each column contains, let's say, 10, 11 etiologies. Once you start doing chi-square tests, and they're basically each time that you run the test, you can actually compare one etiologic factor in 1 year with the rest of the group. And that means that you will end up doing numerous times of chi-square tests. And one concept in biostatistics is that once you start doing multiple testing using chi-square method, you can actually get some random significant findings. That means that randomly your p-value could drop below 0.05, and that doesn't mean that really there was an association. That doesn't mean that there's there was a significant difference in reality. So what the statisticians do is that they actually run a test on the test. I mean, you have to listen to me carefully. So you run a test on your test to validate the outcome of the test that you ran. And that is the methodology that we introduced here. Basically, the abbreviation is BH. It's a very common test of basically a correction for multiple testing, Benjamin-Hochberg test. Okay, so instead of p-value, this generates a q-value, and the q-value, once you have a p-value of less than 0.05, you run this Benjamin-Hochberg test basically on your chi-square test, and if the q-value is equal to 0.05 and less, then it verifies that your chi-square test was not randomly significant, but and it was a true significant finding. This is how it works. So, and one thing that we found, for instance, as Dr. Abai mentioned, that the prevalence of external cervical resorption showed a fluctuation, a significant fluctuation. It showed that it dropped significantly in 2020, for instance, or it increased significantly in 2021. But once we ran the Benjamin-Hochberg test on that finding, the Q value was not less than 0.05 or not equal
so
to.
it meant that this significance was by accident, right?
Yes, was by random. So then you cannot call this. And and again, this, of course, I'm not a biostatistician. These are the methodology introduced by our biostatistics group, Di Wu and Peter Yu, who actually ran all these tests. In that table number 2, it's basically, if you scroll all the way to the right side of the table, you can see the key values ran on the on significant p values. You can see where the outcomes, significant outcomes, are verified or they're not verified.
Dr. Abai, can you please bring this table and show this table to all of the audience?
If you're pulling up the PDF, you need to turn it 90 degrees so I can.
I think it's here, right? No, it's no, the table, the table. Okay, so let me just summarize your talk about this new test, this BH test, as
yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So when you have different etiologic factors which individually have a linear association, so you can retest your test to show that if your p-values are not dropped by chance, right? Am I right?
That's correct. That's correct. The multiple testing, once the number of chi-square tests exceed a certain number, which I don't have that number in mind. In the case of this paper is numerous. You have to think about 11 etiologists tested in 3 columns, so 33 basically points of test. So once you exceed a certain number, the likelihood of generating significant p-values just by random, it goes up. So it is appropriate to run this BH test. The point here is that some people may not do it, and it's not something common. But these group of biostatisticians that I work with them, they're very dedicated to just run these tests correctly. And they ran this at the beginning, said that one of the findings doesn't seem to be really significant, and then after running the BH test, they actually had a proof of it. Initially, I decided not to include this in the paper, but once the paper was reviewed by a statistician, they said that you need to put the Q values in the table too, so people will understand what you did, and then I eventually did it.
Thank you. Nice. It was really great. It was the first time I was hearing about this.
Sure. First time for me too. Once I did the paper, I learned something.
Okay, Dr. Abai, please go ahead.
Table 2. Table 2.
Yeah. We saw this table and we talked
Yes.
over the table. So please go through the slides and go for the results and discussion.
In year-to-year chi-square analysis showed that the rate of cracks significantly increased in 2020 and 2021 compared with 2019. However, the rate of cracks was significantly reduced in 2021 compared to 2020, and the number of teeth with persistent infection reduced in 2020 compared with 2019, and then increased in 2021 compared with 2020. The average age of patient with practice was 53.2 and 49 and 52 years in 2019, 2020, and 2021, respectively. And an age-based scatterplot of patients with practice showed that most of these patients were 40 to 60 years of age, and when the patients were divided into three age of group, the logistic regression analysis showed that there was no association between practice, age group, and sex in 2019. Characters were significantly associated with the age group of 40 to 60 years in 2020. A significant association between practice age range of 14 to 60 years and more than 60 years and male sex in 2021.
Dr. Abe, please share your slides, because the thing that we're just facing up to now is just all the way table 2. Please share the slides, because I think you're sharing another window of yours.
No, I shared the slides.
But the thing I have is just frozen on table 2. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, as you know.
Let me start the discussion. In discussion, the article said that this is the first report addressing the association between the COVID-19 pandemic and change in the etiology of endodontic pathosis. The rate of practice, the personal study showed that the initial COVID-19 was very well associated with a significant increase in the rate of practice. 1 year later, the rate was still significantly elevated compared to the per-pandemic level, but significantly less than at the initial outbreak. A point that I must say, in the article said there were no change related to the prevalence of caries or restorative dental work, and the increase in the rate of practice may be an indirect consequence of the pandemic because of socioeconomic state and increased stress level. And a more direct impact on oral health, specifically related to temporomandibular joint disorder. Because of seeing higher numbers of patients with paralysis and TMT. We showed an increase in stress level among the this COVID-19. This part we repeat this reason.
Dr. Nosrat, I would like to ask you a question in this part. Is there any other evidence pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic and its association with bruxism or parafunctional habits or depressive symptoms? I think you could have found more references to this part to compare your idea with the other publications present in the literature.
Definitely, there are many more right now. At the time when I was writing this paper, and there were some other papers to cite. I have a little bit of problems with. I had some problems with some of those papers. Like they're published in low impact journals. The methodology was not reliable, or the sample size was really low. So I stayed away from those papers. There are definitely many more of good quality papers in the literature right now. It was enough at the time to say this is what we think that caused the increase in the rate of cracked teeth, and this is what we suggest to do in the future. But let me think. So the time that I was writing this paper was back in I can look at the timeline of the paper, but this was published in October of JOE. It was accepted 4 months before that, which was so October accepted. We submitted around June. In around February 2022, January, February 2022, I was basically involved in writing this paper. At that time, I mean, the number of basically articles out showing an association between parafunctional habits like bruxism and clenching, and I mean, increasing the number of these reports with COVID-19 pandemic, and also any supporting evidence showing that there could be an increase in number of cracked teeth in pandemic was very limited. There was many studies that I decided not to cite, and there were some studies that I decided to cite in this paper. If we had this conversation at that time, I could have basically go over those reasons better. But in general, the decision was made about citing or not citing those papers was basically the quality of those publications, the journal where they're published, and then basically their sample sizes. We didn't want to grab everything and put them together, say, hey, this is what we think, and here's the evidence. So once you do that, you actually give something to the reviewer of the journal to say, I'm not really sure what I'm talking about. So we don't want this to happen. So we were very conservative in terms of what to cite and what not to cite.
Of course, there is another problem, I think, because at the time of pandemic, we really didn't have good quality evidence about association between anything with COVID, not only bruxism or parafunctional habits or whatever. So I think, but I think there are a large number of journals who would like to accept even low quality papers in order to give data to the public.
Yes.
And so because of this special let's say outrageous time to say that okay, there is no evidence, so let's have something to do with the low quality evidence. So therefore I think it's not bad to cite even low quality evidence, because you are at the pre-pandemic, it's a time of the initial periods, it's the time of the infancy of this period, because you do not have any sufficient data. Therefore, I think, it's my own opinion that it's unfair to not to cite even low quality evidence. At this time, we do have a large number of high quality evidence, and we do have to cite them. We do have to make them improved. But sometimes, because lack of evidence sometimes push some, imposes some limitations on us. What's your opinion?
Well, I do agree with you. I mean, to some extent, it happened in the Journal of Endodontics and International Endodontic Journal. If you look at the quality of publication that was specifically came out on the topic of COVID-19, like the type of papers that you would never see in the Journal of Endodontics, you would see in the category of COVID-19. And that I understand, and I cited, and I screen even some of those papers, to be honest with you. And I said, even if it's even though it's published in the Journal of Endodontics, I'm not going to cite this paper because, in my opinion, it's a piece of garbage. The fact is that once, as you said, once there's a pressure to publish something about what's going on, and everybody's just want to see something coming out, and the editors are under pressure, so they lower the bar, they lower the threshold and say, okay, let's ignore this, let's ignore that, and as a result of that, you'll see some low quality publication coming out. But that was not the style that I was interested in. So I wanted to publish something that is valuable. So of course it will take time. Of course it will not come out at the right time when people are looking for it. And I wanted to cite only those publications that I thought they're worthy of citation, like the ones that are published in the Journal of Dental Research, or some good quality publications in the Journal of Endodontics. I rarely saw anything in International Endodontic Journal except a couple of review papers. And the rest are from medical journals, if you look at the publications that are cited in my paper. And I had to actually review the abstract of those papers, sometimes full text, to understand if this is the right paper to cite. I totally agree with what you're saying, and in my opinion, if I had submitted this paper to the Journal of Dental Research, they would have rejected it because it's not prospective; it's retrospective. That's their style. And in my mind, it would have been stupid to argue this with them, but I know that's their style. They just don't publish retrospective studies, no matter what, no matter how much people need that data. So I decided to submit it to the Journal of Endodontics, and we sort of had a history with them. We published 2 papers. I thought the third one is going to go through. If someone else is going to look at my paper later in the future, said that I'm not going to cite anything that is published in the Journal of Endodontics, nothing below JDR, I would lose that opportunity. But it's basically, I'm getting back to your argument that people can be picky. I had some standards. I stuck with it. It went well, but I do get your point, Hadi. I do, and I'm not up to argue that with you. It's a personal choice at the point.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know you. I know all of your standards, and I'm definitely, I definitely agree with you because of your character. Of course, it's really a good approach. But when things changes, when things are changing in the world, and some unexpected events happen, so even an earthquake happens in the world of literature, I suppose, and I think something happens that you don't expect from high quality journals. Sometimes you find high quality journals to publish even low quality, as you mentioned, garbages. These things happen quite often in the Journal of Endodontics, but less often in International Endodontic. We really review these papers in the journal, client them, and we try to discuss. So we found that even some of our really strong points against. Anyhow, the journal names are not that much important, actually, but the quality of the papers are actually worthy.
I agree with you.
I appreciate your point, and thank you very much for. Okay, let's go ahead, Dr. Abay, please. We are just having less than 10 minutes time. Just go ahead.
Two previous studies on the characteristics of a patient visit in 2020 and 2021 showed that the patient visit the endodontic office during the intra-outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020 was significantly younger compared with the same period in 2019. This trend reversed in 2021, similar to pre-pandemic level, and also male patients had a higher number of visits in 2021. As noted, the present study showed that the rate of crack was significantly higher among patients aged 40 to 60 years in 2020 and older than 60 years in 2021, but not in 2019. A higher rate of cracks in male patients in 2021, which was not observed in 2020 or 2019. In other words, the COVID-19 pandemic might have resulted in the change in the demographic pattern of patients with practice in that crack arose earlier in study patients that ordinarily reported and showed a higher rate in male in 2021. The present study showed that the number of cases with persistent infection after previous endodontic treatment was significantly reduced in 2020, which then increased in 2021 to return to pre-pandemic level in 2019. Visits were mainly driven by patients' pain level and the patients who did not have moderate to severe pain may not have been motivated to seek treatment during the pandemic.
Have you all broke up? Hello. Oh. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Mr. Abai, please go ahead.
Okay. Previous study showed that periapical lesions associated with the root canal treatments are mainly asymptomatic, and the majority of them tended to stay asymptomatic for a long period of time, up to 2 years. Therefore, the reduction in the number of cases presenting with persistent disease during the initial outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020 may have been related to the fact that the most of these patients were asymptomatic. Another reason that the reduction in the number of cases with persistent disease in 2020 is the national closure of many dental offices. Therefore, the patient with asymptomatic disease may not have known about their disease status because they skipped their routine dental radiographic examination. And the initial outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020 and the persistent pandemic in 2021 did not result in a significant change in the rate of caries in the practices studied, usually cases with deep primary or recurrent caries, lesion, and caries spot exposure are referred to in the endodontic office, not those with shallow caries lesion. These deep and extensive lesions take a long time to develop, which may be longer than the period of this study. About ECR, about the overall incidence of ECR, there is a lack of data regarding the prevalence of ECR and vertical root fracture, and it's useful to know the prevalence. It's about 0.6% to 2.2% of all cases. A vertical root fracture constitutes 3 to 4% of total cases. About limitations, the data are located to endodontist office located in the Washington DC and Northern Virginia areas. We have a Dr. Asadian.
Your voice is good. You can continue.
Hello, hello. Hello. You have my voice? You hear me?
Yes, I hear both of you well.
Oh, okay. I'm Dr. Abay, please. Dr. Abay, please go ahead. Dr. Abay, you hear me?
Very bad.
Let me ask Dr. Nosrat a question about this part. Once I bumped into a word in the discussion, if I'm not mistaken, that you stated that one of the limitations of our study was, it is worth noting that the process of data collection was not blinded in this study. So do you think that blinding is important, and is it a limitation in observational studies? And how do you find this a limitation? I don't think that this blindness is a limitation for observational studies. It is, as far as I know, blinded is necessary for for interventional studies rather than observational ones.
That's right. I agree with you. This is something that was pushed by the reviewer to put in there. I did not have it. I did not have it in the original paper. I have evidence for it. The question they raised was that if the data collection was done by the same people who have done the treatments, they're not blinded, and if they knew that this is going to be a published study, they would try to detect more crack teeth. And that was, in my opinion, was not a correct comment. But once you get these comments, you have to politically get around them. So of course I wasn't going to change anything in the paper. I said, just to satisfy the reviewer, I'll just say that this data collection was not blinded. But yes, blinding is absolutely not applicable to observational studies, because what's done is done. You just go back and collect the data. You're not doing a prospective randomized clinical trial. That's one thing. The other thing is that all the story happened before the data collection. So this was not a prospective study. This is retrospective.
Yeah.
Not the core is observational, and most of the data collection was done by someone who was not involved in treatments. That's Sahar Tahiri, one of our staff in the office, who had access to all these electronic charts, and just all she had to do is just pull up the chart and copy and paste the data in that chart to an Excel sheet. That's all. So arguing that with the reviewer is absolutely pointless. You don't want to say something that the associate editor will send the paper back to the reviewer just to get around it, and that's what we chose to do. So I agree with you, and that's not a term that I wanted to be there. I was pushed to do it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Go ahead, please, Dr. Abayi. We have no more than 5 minutes. Please just get it around and have it finished. Okay, please.
Dr. Asadian, it's the end of paper, and the last point is about blinding, and you say.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Abayi, for your nice presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Nosrat, for being with us. Ali, I love you too much. And whenever I see your name and in Journal of Endodontics. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to apologize to not actually. So the initial when I started the meeting, I could only see you and one icon that was telling University of Medical Sciences. Now I see the list of people who are at the meeting. So I apologize for not seeing this at the beginning. I did not basically have a view of the participants of the meeting. So hello to everyone. Sorry at the end, and apologies for not seeing that at the beginning. I expected to see Dr. Nekufar. Is he one of these Tehran University Medical Sciences icons, or he's not there tonight?
No, he's not here because he's on the flight.
Oh.
He's back from I think Spain to Tehran, so he's
Good.
on the flight right now. That's why
Sure.
I'm his alternative.
You're as good as him. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that I want to make sure that nothing happened to him. That's all. I want to make sure he's doing okay.
Thank you very much. It was really a nice discussion with you. We always have some faces. We have the face of Professor Meric. Meric, do you have any comments?
Thank you very much. Really, the discussion was fantastic. I don't have anything to add, but I just want to thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Meric is from Turkey. She's with us from Turkey, and we had a joint program with Meric and us on Yeditepe University. A nice and memorable experience. Thank you very much to be with us, Meric, and thank you very much for being with us, Ali. It was a really nice discussion. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from you, as I do all the time. And I hope to see you in the real case. Say my hi to your family and to your cute baby. And I hope everything goes well with you. Also, I would like to thank all the participants here tonight. And let's call it a day. And I say goodbye to everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.